In today's video, we need to talk about Tottenham Hotspur and more so about Ange Postecoglou because I tell you what, if he goes out the Europa League, if he fails to beat Frankfurt, I think that is him done. I think that is over for him. And I have to say, my opinions on Ange Postecoglou definitely have changed a little bit in recent weeks. And I'm going to give you my opinion on Ange, if Tottenham should sack him, what they should do with him, and who are the potential replacements. Because Thiago Motta is available right now. There's rumours of Poch coming back, but I think that's just because he was seen having a conversation with Levy. And we're going to talk about the Tottenham news around Ange's future. I'm going to give you my opinion on everything going on at Tottenham because it's been a while since I made a Tottenham video, and I do apologise, but I didn't watch the Fulham game because I had a Sunday League game on at the same time. And then when you're in the Europa League, you're playing at the same time as Man United. So unless the game looks interesting, most of the time my eyes are on the United screen. But it is a troubling time for Tottenham. There's a lot of talk about Ange being sacked. I think if he was going to be sacked in international break, he would have been sacked by now. But you look at these games coming up, and there's talk that he could be sacked before the end of the season. Chelsea, who, even when Chelsea aren't at their best, they always seem to find a way versus Tottenham. Southampton, you should win. If you don't win that, he might just be gone because it's Southampton. But again, it's the Europa League. Frankfurt, that's a difficult game. I think Frankfurt are arguably one of the best teams in Europa League and one of the hardest games you're going to have. Wolves, again, should win, but Wolves aren't as bad as I feel like their league position suggests. Frankfurt, difficult game. Forest, difficult game. And Liverpool, the only thing I can see with Liverpool is they probably have won the league by then. So they might have dropped off a bit. But again, you don't have the best luck, particularly at Anfield. It's going to be a difficult month for Tottenham. And the conversation is, will Ange be sacked? Could he be sacked mid-season? And why have my opinions changed? Now, I'm going to give you a sum of my opinion before I get into the news on Ange Postecoglou and give you my thoughts on Tottenham. But I'm going to say this on Ange. I don't think there's any point sacking him mid-season, even with Thiago Motta available, because Thiago Motta plays such a different way, five at the back, and Ruben Amorim came into Manchester United. He really struggled at first, but it's starting to click now. And when you've only got 9 games left in the season in this really important Europa League run, Thiago Motta would have to implement something so new that the players might take a while to adapt. So I don't think there's any point in sacking Ange now. Sacking Ange in the summer, if he continues going on the way he's going, I think is a strong possibility. I think if Ange wins the Europa League and shows something in these last 9 games, you know, I could get behind Ange staying at Tottenham, and I could say, you know what, the youth, the project, what he's building at Tottenham, there's something there. I also know the biggest problem at Tottenham is not Ange, it's Daniel Levy, it's those above Ange. So you can sack Ange and bring in another manager, but if you're not going to support the next manager that comes in, there's no point. The bigger problems are always at the top of Tottenham. But if Ange gets knocked out of the Europa League and Tottenham continue sort of not being convincing, you know, breaking the record for the most loss in the Premier League season, I know there's an injury crisis, but more players are coming back. I do look at it and say, maybe Ange isn't the guy to take on this Tottenham project. Maybe there's somebody else out there. Which brings me into sort of the news. Now, there is rumours from like Footy Insider and not like the most credible sources. I don't even know if it was Footy Insider, but it was one of those sources that wasn't credible, that Tottenham could go for Thiago Motta to replace Ange. I mean, he's available, but Ruben Amorim came into Manchester United. It's only just start clicking now. Thiago Motta plays such a different way. He's someone that you might as well just bring in the summer. He's not someone that I think you bring in and wins you the Europa League right now. And you need the Europa League. And I think the best thing to do is stick with Ange until the end of the season. But at the end of the season, you've got to look at the Thiago Mottas, the Iriolas. Like, even a Thomas Frank can say, could they do a better job than Ange in the summer? But he's obviously been sacked, which is quite crazy because I think that they stuck with Allegri for so long and then sacked Thiago Motta at the first hurdle. But there is a lot of rumours about Ange and his future. This was said by Matt Law and Jay Percy of The Telegraph. There have been reports that Bournemouth want to extend Iriola's contract, although sources close to his camp have indicated he'd be interested in taking over at Tottenham. I've always said with Tottenham and the whole Iriola situation, if Iriola wants the Tottenham job and is available in the summer, Iriola is a very good manager to bring in. The question is, will he want the Tottenham job in the summer? Tottenham are a little bit like Man United, but I do think we're just graveyards for managers. We have the same issue with the owners and the manager, and I think toxicity can get into the club and every manager seems to struggle. But then they'll leave Man United and they might do well. Moyes will leave, he'll win a trophy. Nuno's left, he's doing well at Forest. It's the only club Jose Mourinho hasn't won a trophy at. You know, it's Tottenham a bit like Man United when it comes to managers. So there's always that question of, would Iriola want the job or not? Apparently, Iriola and Marco Silva are the leading candidates to succeed Ange if Tottenham Hotspur change manager. Pressure is growing once again on Postecoglou, with Spurs 14th in the Premier League with just 9 games to play as well. Sami Mokbel said this. All current indications are that Tottenham want to get to the end of the season before reviewing the campaign and coming to a decision over Ange's future. However, results are likely to dictate how the club approaches the situation. And in my opinion on Ange, I feel like this makes sense. I feel like it would be a mistake to sack Ange now, right now in this moment, because I don't see the point of bringing in a short-term manager for 9 games in Europa League. If you were going to bring in a short-term manager for the Europa League, you'd bring in a Jose Mourinho, but you can't do that unless you could bring in a trophy specialist. I don't think there's any point in sacking Ange now and just bringing in someone to the end of the season. I think the best thing that Tottenham could do is keep with Ange to the end of the season. A little bit like how United kept with Ten Hag to the end of the season. Then they were going to sack him because they were going to bring in Tuchel. Tuchel rejected us, and then we kept with Ten Hag, then ended up sacking him, which was a bit silly on our end. But I think you might as well keep with Ange to the end of the season and then do an end of season review. And the end of season review will be like, these are the managers available. These are the managers that be willing to come to Tottenham. This is the squad. This is the players. These are the players that this manager would need. This is the pros for Ange. This is the cons for Ange. And then make a collective decision. I think that's the best thing Tottenham could do, because I do think it would be a mistake if they went, you know what, we're going to sack Ange right now because there's 9 games left. Now, if Ange was sacked right now, would it be fair? Elements of it, yes, because things haven't been good enough right now. Results haven't been good enough. I think Tottenham are breaking records for it to be the worst ever season, but they've had injuries, they've had other issues. I just feel like there's not long left. So these were my thoughts on the news. Ange knocked out AZ right now and is going to face Frankfurt. I think had you been knocked out by AZ, I think this international break, talk of sacking Ange and just having an interim to the end of the season just to get Ange out the club would have made more sense. But you're still in the Europa League. I think, just because he lost at Fulham, who are quite a good side, I don't think that's a game to warrant sacking him in the international break. And if he was going to be sacked in the international break, I think he'd be sacked now. Being knocked out the Europa League could mean he's sacked mid-season. I think if you lose to Frankfurt, they could sack him end of the season before the summer. But I think they're just going to say, you know what, what's the point of bringing the interim for 5 games? Might as well just stick with Ange, because I think they're going to stick with him for the Europa. But I do think it makes sense to go to the end of the season and make a decision, like United did with Ten Hag. And United's decision was to sack Ten Hag in the summer. They just couldn't get the managers available. And I think because Dan Ashworth and Barada weren't in place because they were on garden leave, United were reluctant to do that. So let's talk about my thoughts on Ange and where they may have changed a bit. So, only Leicester and Ipswich have picked up fewer points over the last 15 games than Tottenham. So this is relegation form. Now I look at it and I go, there was a point where Ange only had 8 senior pros fit. And I don't think was back this summer. I know money was spent this summer at Tottenham, and you also brought Tell in. But Solanke's the only player you've brought in the last year that hasn't been a teenager. And Burwell, fantastic. Archie Gray, fantastic. And I probably 2 of the players Ange trusts the most right now. But if Tottenham want to move up that league table, they need ready-made, experienced players. Like, they need a proper winger that is ready now. I think Odegaard's got a good potential. Burwell looks fantastic. He looks like your best midfielder. Great, fantastic. But those young players are great. But to get the best out of those young players, you're going to need, more ready-made players around them and more ready-made players, because I feel like it's the young players stepping up. The Bentancurs disappearing. Basuma, who even got called out, disappearing. So I look at it like that. I say, look, you've got 15 points. You've got the fewest points in the last 15 games, other than Ipswich and Leicester. Both teams, Ipswich and Leicester, I believe, beat Tottenham as well. So you gifted Leicester that only win in like the last 15 games, and 15 losses is your most in a league campaign since 08-09, and you still got 9 to go, which means you could literally break records here. So this is sackable. This is absolutely sackable. Injury situation behind, this is absolutely sackable, even with injuries. But I look at the context, I look at the injuries. I think Mickey van der Ven and Romero are so key. When they're fit, I feel like Ange Ball is good. But as soon as they're injured, Ange Ball just goes down the drain. And I've backed Ange a lot. Like, as a Manchester United fan, as a neutral, I've backed Ange a lot because I backed Ten Hag a lot last season. I said the biggest problem at Man United is the people above Ten Hag, the idiots that would spend 72 million on Højlund, 85 million on Anthony, 70 million on Casemiro, because we spend money a bit more than Daniel Levy does, but we spend money on stupid stuff. And I was like, the biggest problem is this needs to change, that needs to change, the Glazers need to go, because the manager can't succeed. And United is slowly implementing those changes with Ineos. It's just, some of the ways they've gone about things I don't particularly like. So Tottenham 100% need to change. above Ange, because if you bring in a new manager, don't back him, treat him like crap, well, that new manager is going to struggle, because this Tottenham squad needs significant investment. It needs significant investment. And I've always backed Ange, been behind him, because I look at the injuries, I look at how Tottenham played a little bit, I think, at the start of the season, and obviously the start of last season when Ange had his squad, and I looked at the potential and how he's developing youth players, and I say, Tottenham have got a project. You've got Vuskovic coming in, you've got, Mikey Moore, Gray, Bergvall, Odegaard. You've got these really exciting youth players. Ange has a good track record for developing youth. And as part of me that thinks, if Ange gets the right players in and builds around this youth, he could do something. But he needs this experienced players. He needs the right players, which would Levy do? I don't know. But I also go, the tactics haven't been good enough. He looks a little out of his depth, and this is sackable despite the injuries. I think there's an element either way. And my conclusion on Ange, which I'll get into, is basically you have to just weigh everything up in the summer, see who's available, make the decision of who is the best to bring this Tottenham squad forward. Because there's obviously other points, about Ange. He does get the best out of youth. He's had many players injured. Tottenham have bigger issues than the manager, and he's still in the Europa League. It's not over yet. He could win Tottenham's first trophy in a very, very long time. And I feel like he's one of those Tottenham managers that has prioritised maybe trophies over the top four, and he wants a trophy. Now, I want a Man United Tottenham final, but at the same time I don't, because I'm like, Tottenham have beat us 3 times this season. I tell you what, if Ange Postecoglou played Man United every week, you might be in a different situation, because you beat us 3 times this season. And I look at it and I say Ange's to blame for some things, but not everything. I do think most of the problems at Tottenham aren't Ange. There's player issues, players aren't good enough, Levy, people above Ange, but there's things Ange is doing wrong. And Ange has to take a portion of the blame, but there's bigger problems. And I think if you get the Basumas out, the Bentancurs out, you bring Cardozo in to maybe replace them at DM, you've also got Archie Gray. So Archie Gray and Cardozo can replace Basuma and Bentancur. You bring in a top-level winger that's a bit more proven, I think, because Son's on the way down. You bring in another striker just to give Solanke a rest. You look at it and you actually get a proper backup to Mickey van der Ven, a left centre-back, maybe even another full-back, although Jed Spencer's been fantastic, and he might start a right-back, and Doggy might start a left-back, but I think you need that another full-back for depth. You need that fourth, Porro, Doggy, Spence, somebody else. I think Tottenham are in a different position, and I think with the youth and with Ange and those players staying fit, I think Tottenham could have something good. It could have something good. I think the team is shattered. I think because he's had so many injuries, the fit players run into the ground and they're shattered. But I do think if Ange wants to save his job, the next 9 Premier League games in the Europa League, he's going to have to pull something out of the bag. Because I look at it and I go, exciting project. When Ange Ball was there, when everyone's fit, it's great. You bring in these players, you get out those players. Ange Ball could work. It could be successful. Give him a 3rd season, get behind the manager, finally give a manager time. But then you've got ECILA, you've got Thomas Frank that have done more in the Premier League. And you might think, well, actually, he got tactically outclassed here. This hasn't been good enough. Thomas Frank, ECILA, proven they could do this. That's the situation you're in. And that's why I sort of said it's a 50-50. And my honest opinion is I was very backing of Ange and supportive of Ange, but I think if a good manager is available in the summer, it makes sense to sack him. But I wouldn't sack him now. And I feel sorry for him. And I think the bigger problems are above him. And I think if he does stay at Tottenham next season, there could be rational reasons to explain it, as I just explained, even if you get knocked out of the Europa League. But it's definitely tactically been poor. Tottenham have been off it even with injuries, because I think you've had a few players back and you've still not quite been as good. But I just think there's bigger problems. So these are my conclusions on Ange and this whole situation, because there is rumours of him being sacked international break. I don't think that's true. I think he'd have been sacked by now. I just think there's no sense to sack him now. Even managers like Thiago Motta are available, because just completely different system. Look at Ten Hag being sacked by Amarin. No sense to sack him now. I think if you're going to bring a new manager, bring them in at the start of summer, give them time to click, back them. Levy's going to have to spend. Ange trusts his young players over Bentancur and Basuma. He clearly hasn't got a squad he can trust. He's clearly had issues with injuries. And I still believe that Ange could succeed at Tottenham with the right recruitment and investment, but you just don't know if Tottenham are going to do that for him. I just look at it and I think the last couple of months have not been good enough at Tottenham. 15 losses already, even with injuries. There's players coming back and it's still not the best, and he's still being done tactically. That I think if he does not win the Europa League, he might have to go. In my opinion, if he does not win the Europa League and you don't get results towards the end of the season, I think Ange will have to go in the summer if and if only a good manager is available. There's no point sacking Ange and bringing in blah, 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 or Gareth Southgate. There's no point sacking Ange and bringing in Gareth Southgate. He's a better manager than Gareth Southgate. But if a good manager is available in the summer and things don't improve, as someone that has backed Ange and given him a lot of support, you'd have to sack him. If he wins the Europa League, or even if he doesn't win the Europa League, but you go and win 8 of these next 9 games, you're in a different position. Because I do think Romero and Van der Ven staying fit makes a huge difference to Ange Ball. So in my opinion, if Tottenham decide to sack Ange right now before Frankfurt game, I think it's a huge mistake. I honestly do. But if they sack him in the summer, right now, it does make sense. And this is someone that has given Ange a lot of support. But the one thing I will say, and one of the reasons I've been so positive about Tottenham is this project. I just think Tottenham have a really exciting project. They have some of the best youth in football, and Ange is good at working with them. And these are the players you want to build around. And I think Ange is willing to build around these players. And that's the only thing. I think if Tottenham are going to replace Ange, they've got to bring in a manager that would build around these players, not chuck them off. You need someone that's like because Lucas Bergvall, Archie Gray in particular, ridiculous. I mean, I've not seen lots of Luka Vuskovic, but every clip I see of him, he looks like a tank. But Lucas Bergvall, I wanted him at Man United. I made a video on him like 3 years ago because I thought Man United were going to sign him. And when he was really young, I was like, this talented kid. Oh, baller. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. I hope this video made sense. I kind of waffled a bit and probably repeated myself a bit, so I apologise. Thank you for watching. Bye.